Good afternoon and welcome to the Business Insights student part, which we're calling Student Question Time this afternoon. We have been given lots of questions from students all over Gloucestershire, and we're going to present those questions this afternoon to our esteemed panel. And I begin with Emma Taylor. Emma Taylor is the warden or the CEO of Dean Close Foundation in Cheltenham. She was at Dean Close many years ago and then went off to be the first headmistress at Christ College Brecon, and was called upon very often by BBC Wales to speak about educational matters. So we're looking forward to hearing from her. We also have the esteemed Oliver Bruce, who is an entrepreneur, managing director of Pinpoint Media, which does video animation, content creation, and has also recently become a podcaster. And not only that, during the first lockdown, he actually managed to find some PPE when no one else could find any. So he is a true entrepreneur, and if something takes his fancy, he will try and sort it out for you. We also have Maddie Howard, who is in cyber, and it's lovely to see a young girl in cyber and doing so well. She actually did a degree in geography and was working in business development, but she's now socio-technical engagement manager at Sygenta, which is quite a mouthful, and is the director at Cyber Cheltenham, or we know it as CYNAM. So welcome to Maddie. And finally, we have Myra Billinghurst, and I don't think there's very much about apprenticeships that Myra doesn't know about, as she's been working in apprenticeships for 14 years, and what a journey, because they have come so far. She's now Sales Business Development Manager. People have big titles these days, specialising in apprenticeships and work-based training at Gloucestershire College. So lots going on there with Kickstart and everything. But I just wondered, Myra, if you wanted to say anything about what was in the news today, that apprenticeships, those that are on apprenticeships, are the first to possibly be made redundant in these times.
Yeah, we were just talking about that, Julie, and it's quite interesting actually, because I think it's because quite often they're the entry-level roles. So they're probably the last person to be recruited into a business, and unfortunately first to go. I would say though, from my own experience, obviously at Gloucestershire College, we do seem to be bucking the trend on that. And we may have lost a few, but we have had other employers pick them up. So actually, for us personally at the college, it hasn't been that bad. And I would say, obviously, because they are the entry-level roles, and they are the ones that are the extra, I suppose, the extra person into a team, they may well be the first to go. But like I say, I don't think we've really felt it that strongly. So, yeah.
That's good news in this area. And while we're on the topic, Oliver, have you used apprentices in your company?
It's interesting. We're actually currently looking at the Kickstart scheme that the government have implemented, and we've got an application out for six apprentices to join the business. It hasn't been signed off yet because they have to go obviously through, I suppose, tender to a certain extent and get it approved by Rishi and his team. So hopefully we'll have 6 people in the next couple of months joining us.
And the attraction for you as an employer to have 6 on the
For me, it's the fact that it gives them an experience in terms of actually what it looks like to work in the world of, in our instance, media. But for them, I suppose they also get paid. We don't have to front that. We don't have to pay for that. They will be paid by the government. If, for instance, they want to stay with us, we have no objections so long as they're good enough to do the job on staying on from a long-term point of view. So actually, it's a foot in the door for them. For us, it's a kind of, I suppose, I wouldn't use the term punt, but I would use the term taking a chance on somebody you might not necessarily have the capital to be able to do normally.
Well, that's good news. And if any students are listening this afternoon, then that's good for them to know as well. When would that start for them?
So it would start in the new year. They have to be on universal credit. There's all the terms and conditions on the Kickstart websites. We don't necessarily get to look through the entire shortlist. It is somewhat shortlisted by the government in that sense. So it's currently in the process of going through that. So yeah, that's all the information I have at the moment. It's not as if you can apply, unfortunately, directly to me.
No, okay. And we've had them at Dean Close, Emma, as well, haven't we? Certainly in the alumni department, we had an apprentice.
Yeah, we've had a few apprentices actually and been really happy with the way the way they've done. I think, as Oliver says, it's a way of, if you're just in two minds as to whether you can afford to or want to employ an additional person, but you've got a team that's a bit stretched. You could do with adding to that team, but you're just in two minds as to whether to add to it permanently. I think apprenticeship's a really good way to deal with that, and of course at the same time you're offering someone a great opportunity to learn a particular area of business. And we, as I say, we've had several, but the one you're thinking of was somebody who came in with very little experience, which is very promising, had 2 years with us, 2 or 3 years, and did several levels of apprenticeship, and then went off to get a highly paid job somewhere else. So she did what we needed. It was great for her, and she went on to get paid well somewhere else.
Yeah, fantastic. And Maddie, does it work the same in the cyber world?
So I actually think that the cyber and digital has probably seen a big increase in companies that are interested in apprentices and apprenticeships. And, you know, as Cynam, we're working with Gloucestershire College to work with our local companies, because companies recognise that particularly when it comes to cyber and digital skills, they're things that kids are interested in teaching themselves. They're coming in with a vast capability and breadth of experience, and these companies really want to snap up these really bright minds and invest them into their companies. So I'd say from a cyber and digital point of view, companies love apprentices. They think it's a fantastic way to engage young people, invest in them, and also invest in the talent pipeline, which we know really needs building within our sector.
Fantastic. Okay, well, we're going to move on to the students themselves. That some of them, especially last year, sort of went through the mill with the whole A-level results, more so than the GCSEs, I think, because it was so dependent on where they were going and what they were doing. And we have had a question that actually said, do the exam boards care? And we could simply say, yes, they do. But we had a brief discussion about, obviously, for the exam boards, they were being guided by the government. At the moment, we don't know really what is going to happen at the end of this year. Emma, can I come to you in case you have any inside information about whether, you know, who was to blame? Was it the government or the exam boards? And have you any idea what might happen this year?
You've forgotten to mention Ofqual, who certainly ought to be considered as a candidate for who to blame. But I'm not sure how helpful it is in a way to apportion blame, because these are really, they were such unpredictable times, and obviously schools and students and exam boards and Ofqual and the government all have a part to play, and you know, all had to try and quickly react. I think now, looking back though, everybody thinks we could have run exams fairly last year, and that a decision was made quickly with good intentions maybe, but actually it really did cause problems for students. And my sympathy is massively with those who left last year, but also those who were in the GCSE year, actually. Not so much because they didn't get the results they needed, but because the experience of, you know, 2 years course leading up to exams, which are meant to be meaningful, wasn't good for either group, really. And, you know, we blame, I think, the pandemic is to blame, ultimately. You know, everybody's trying to do what they can for fairness. But in terms of inside line on what could happen this year, obviously Wales and Scotland to some extent have now decided not to run external exams, although, you know, do read the small print, because they are still going to be doing tests that will be externally marked and moderated. So you could argue that that's not very different from doing an exam, really. Everybody's aim is that it should be fair, that students' work should be fairly examined, and that people should be rewarded with the grades that they deserve on the basis of what they know. But there's lots of debate about how you achieve that fairness. My best guess, for what it's worth, you know, talking to people in the sector, is that exams will run in England according to the timetable already issued, and I hope they do, because I think there should be some element of testing for fairness, but that they will be a combination of cut down exams on the day, and also mocks will matter. So my big piece of advice for students is, don't leave it till the last minute. Your mocks will matter, and it's possible that your continuous assessment by teachers will also matter. So, you know, you have been warned. I think that's the key. You know, don't wait, because it's likely that those mocks, if people are unable to sit an exam in the summer, the mocks might actually then be marked by the exam board in order to give them a fair grade.
And so many think, oh, they're only mocks, so we won't bother revising for those as much, yeah. I'd like to ask Maddie and Oliver, really, how much do you take into account when you have a pile of CVs and you have someone applying for a job? How much do you take into account their exam grades? Oliver?
Go for it, Maddie.
Oh.
Okay. In terms of how much do we take into account CVs, really it's based on the current experience and I suppose the background that they've got in terms of the industry. I think from an apprenticeship point of view, it would be different. I think where we are as a business at the moment is very much by the apprentices taking people on who are experienced. So really, to answer your question, we don't take grades into account vastly. Really, you know, I don't even look at the grades. I look at what they've done over the last 3 years. If, for instance, they've been in our sector, our world, our industry, it's good enough for me. I don't mind if they got a D or an A star. Okay, Maddie?
Yeah, I'd echo that. I think it's definitely about, you know, aptitude and your willingness to apply yourself to something, particularly within, when I look at, you know, CVs, or we've got young people, they might not have done that well in school, but actually their ability within a cyber context, what they've taught themselves, and that's an amazing quality to have in a young person, is that they've gone away and they've taught themselves and they're passionate about what they're doing. And so I think it's really important that, you know, companies actually, particularly in the cyber and digital, and I think we're quite good at this, that it's more about what somebody can bring to the table as them as a person. It's not about what's on that piece of paper, because there are roles that, you know, you do need a certain level of qualification for, but actually, how do you apply yourself? Are you resilient? Are you prepared to learn? And are you prepared to get your head down and put in the work that you need to do? And are you passionate about it? Because businesses, they want a workforce that's passionate, because that's where you get the best results, is when everyone wants to work for that company because they love what they do.
And Myra, we were talking before we came on actually about the qualifications, and obviously a lot of the apprenticeship courses are vocational, so grades may not be so important, especially applying for the apprenticeships. But generally, how did people respond at the end of their apprenticeships last year with everything that was going on?
Actually, it's everyone's adapted, and everyone really adapted really quickly. So anything that we didn't cover, I would say, while we were actually locked down, got picked up. So as soon as everything was back and reopened over the summer, everything was definitely up and running, and, you know, everything finished off as it needed to be. I would say I do agree with Maddie, because it's very much about your attitude. At the college, we do look for entry grades, but it's very much about the person. So it's got to be, you know, what is their aptitude? Are they really interested? Do they want to learn? I think that's so much more important sometimes than just the grades. We look at the whole person, not just, you know, the entry criteria, which I think is really important.
I think we had quite a few students that are interested in going into business. One of the questions was, what extracurricular activities are best for attracting job opportunities in business? So obviously some schools run a lot of extracurricular activities and they're really accented. Some students have to go to school till 3:30 and then do all their extracurricular activities. How important in the world of business is it that you do a lot of those things, do you think, Oliver?
I think for me, showing that you're interested in broadening your horizons or getting experience in a field, be that hospitality or you know, the service sector whereby you're talking to the client, that's important, because actually if you can liaise with a client or you can talk to people clearly, that goes a long way regardless of actually what your background is. I think for me, if I were to dial back the clock and look at what I would do from an extracurricular point of view, I would teach myself a lot more about development data, cyber tech, specifically because that's where the world's going now. But arguably, I would also work in a business or indeed a part-time job that is very, very much customer focused, talking to people that walk through the door, talking to people, serving them meals, drinks, whatever. Because for me, that's quite important.
Be a people person, yeah. Maddie?
So I think, you know, you're going to have people who are sporty, you're going to have people who are not sporty, but doing something that involves you working as a team is really important. So whether that's, you know, netball team, or you join, we have lots of schools that have run cyber clubs, and you're working with like-minded people, but you're working as a team, and those qualities that you build up as a person from working with a team are really important. And so I think that it's, you know, it can be quite overwhelming for some students to push themselves out of their comfort zone, but it's really important too, because you never know, you might really enjoy it, you'll learn something new, but actually it'll see you really well in the future as you kind of develop, and you develop those personal qualities.
And actually, at Dean Close, Emma, we sort of emphasise, don't we, Duke of Edinburgh schemes, or all those sorts of things that we tell the students that they will look good on their personal statement or their CV.
Yeah, so there's that what will look good on your CV thing, where I think things like that, and service to the community activities as well, things where you're actually doing something for somebody else, are good. For me, because Dean Close is a school that lays on lots of extracurricular activities, I think the difference is somebody who actually chooses to do something because they want to, or even to start something of their own. So what really impresses me is when somebody says, you know, there wasn't a Mandarin club, I really wanted to learn Mandarin, you know, I set out to persuade, you know, the powers that be that there should be a Mandarin club, and there was. And you know, for me that really impresses, that somebody isn't just going through the conveyor belt doing all the expected things, but you know, being prepared to have an opinion of their own and a preference, and see it happen.
Yeah, and I've read some apprenticeship applications actually through Pied Piper, Myra, so I've seen that the forms are quite detailed in letting them offer everything they do outside the classroom.
Yeah, I would also say that it's always quite useful, if you can, to get yourself a little part-time job. I know a lot of people don't always agree with that, but we do find that the applicants that do the best anyway in apprenticeships are people who've had a little step into the world of business and have done something. So, and I think sometimes, like Oliver was saying, even if it's just, you know, doing a bit of food running in the local pub, or washing up on a Friday or something like that, sometimes it just gives you the opportunity to talk to other people other than your, you know, your teachers or your school friends, and how to communicate and converse and how business works. And we usually find that those people do better on apprenticeships, because it's not such a shock to suddenly come out of school and go straight into a job with training, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, actually, another question that...
Julie, you did say that we were allowed to disagree with one another, didn't you?
Yes.
So can I respond to that for a second? Because I think we are actually just missing out that there are different routes. It might be that for the sort of person who wants to be an apprentice, that is exactly right. You know, that they will, because that's what they're like, want to see what's the point of all this, and do something in the world of work. But of course, there is a completely different route, which is, I'm really interested in history. I just want to study history. And I'm going off to university and I'm going to study history, and I don't know what I want to do yet. And I think that's equally fine. I just want to say that I think it's equally fine, and that person can still go off to university, get their degree, and discover more about themselves and about what they're interested in before they then make that vocational choice. I wouldn't want anybody to feel that you have to make those choices at a very young age.
One thing, sorry, Oliver, I'll just say, so I did geography at university, I now work in cyber. I've had the weirdest jobs ever. I've waitressed, I sold beer at St James's Park, at the football club. I've done fruit picking in the summer, all of which were fantastic opportunities that really helped to grow me as a person. Some days I hated it, some days I loved it. But actually, I think that, you know, if there's any opportunity just to pick up a little bit of work here and there, you know, I will never ever do fruit picking ever again because I stank of rotten apple. But it was great fun. I did it with my friends, and there was lots of things that I learned from that in terms of what I don't want to do and actually what I do want to do. So I think that you're going to, as you grow up, there's going to be different opportunities to try different stuff, and sometimes it's about, am I doing this because I think it will do me well in my career? No, I'm going to do it because, you know, it's an experience and I might get something out of it.
And actually, I'll come to you next, Oliver, because I was going to use you as an example, Maddie, as you did do geography. And we were on a panel yesterday where you told them really you didn't know where it was going to go at all. But actually, another question that was actually asked, and it's very specific, really. What types of summer jobs are best for a future in business management? Not even business, but business management. So, Ollie, we'll come to you for that one. But surely, doesn't matter what kind of job it is, does it?
No, not really. I mean, let's dial the clock, as I said. I mean, when Maddie quite rightly alluded to the fact that she was fruit picking, if I'd gone down the career path that I was doing when I was, whatever it was, 10, I'd have been a bin man. I used to be fascinated by the bin lorries. And, you know, I don't want to be a bin man now, but we all, you know, have our things back then. But arguably, with regards to jobs, I worked in Domino's for 7 hours before I got fired. I worked in a pub, you know, for about 7 months before I got fired. The point is, I don't mind about getting fired. I was out there trying to get a job, and the ability to show that you've tried, regardless of if you keep getting knocked down, that from an employer's point of view is really important. Managing is a completely different kettle of fish. Not everyone can manage. I'm not a very good manager. It's a strength that some people have, not everyone does. Sales is a thing that if you can sell, you can pretty much get a job anywhere, because everybody needs somebody to sell something, regardless of if that's pizza, fruit, whatever it is. People need somebody to sell something. So actually, for me, if something can sell, then they're pretty invaluable to me.
Or surely, if you are a people person, you know, not everyone is a born salesman, but if you can be polite and be a people person, then surely that's a good thing too. I don't think so. I think we all agree that any kind of summer job at all would be the way forward, no matter what you want to do. Oh, I've gone quiet, apparently. It's very rare that I go quiet.
I know. We can normally hear you, but we can't right now.
Oh. So my point was that it doesn't really matter what kind of job you get in the summer. Just get a job in the summer, although that might be quite difficult in these times, really. So the next question we have from a year 13 student is, what effect do you think COVID will have on education generally? So Emma, do you want to head up on this one?
Sure. I mean, I actually think this is quite exciting because I think we have been forced to innovate. Schools aren't necessarily always the most innovative places. I'll hold my hand up to that. But you know, we've been forced to innovate. Certainly in Dean Close, I would say we've made 5 years progress in 6 months in terms of the use of technology in the classroom, in terms of the ways in which we communicate as well. Look how used we all are to working in this way. I certainly wasn't doing this before the pandemic. So I think it'll be interesting to see what emerges at the end, because obviously we do miss face-to-face, and it is great to have people back being educated face-to-face. I don't think the teacher is suddenly going to become replaced by AI. You know, people really do benefit from being face-to-face in human contact when they're learning. But you know, we really are developing an understanding that different people learn in different ways. And some people did really well in lockdown without teachers, which was a bit shocking for us, because they really benefited from being able to go at their own pace, to go back and replay part of what they're learning rather than having to keep up with what's happening in a lesson, to be able to repeat work, to choose to dot around, do things in different orders. In other words, they could be more in control sometimes of their own learning. And that's fantastic. What will happen over the next little while is that research will come out to show which of those things really work well. But in the meantime, we will all have developed greater capability to use the technology in the best possible way without losing, as I say, that humanity, which is never going to be, I hope and believe, is never going to go away. You know, because there are so many important skills that we're trying to develop, like creativity and teamwork, we wouldn't ever just want this to be a knowledge thing. We're not just trying to acquire knowledge. So I think some things will change and some things won't, but it's made us think. You know, it's really made us think, and that's been really good for us. I think parents have also been able to be more involved in their own children's education in some ways, which has been good. It's nothing like for a teacher giving a lesson online and having the parent standing behind the student listening to what you're saying. You know, that doesn't normally happen. But it does mean that A, the parent knows what's happening and has sympathy for the teacher. And B, I think that the parent is probably better able to say to their child, let me reinforce that with you, or what did you make of that? Or, you know, it's more of a three-legged stool with parents more involved. And certainly for Dean Close, where we have people who live at a distance, it's meant that we've been able to include parents who live on other continents, for example, in our assemblies or our plays or our activities at school. So lots of things I think will come out of it, and most of them will be really exciting. But for the current level of students, that just means they're involved as it happens in a period of flux, which can be either very exciting or very unsettling, depending on your personality.
And in the apprenticeships, Myra, obviously they had to stop, and will they be they'll carry on doing them months afterwards instead of finishing when they would normally finish?
I don't think we've got any apprentices that didn't finish on time. We did get them in and we got them finished on time. And I think it's a bit like Emma was saying, we've just been very flexible. So we have been able to do things remotely. But for the practical aspects, we have brought students into college to get the practical applications done. I don't think it's had a really detrimental effect on apprenticeships, to be honest with you. It's been different. It's been hard work for, you know, the teachers to make sure that those young people are attending those remote classes and understanding what is being delivered to them. And some people are going to be better than others. You know, some people are really going to struggle with that. And some people are always going to be able to pick up and manage their own learning. So I think it's making sure that you've got that across the board for everybody. Yeah. So, yeah.
Has it been possible, Oliver, in your sector to continue to make films? And you're still not hearing me very well. Have you been able to make films and continue? Can you hear me?
Yeah. So
have you been able to continue doing that through COVID, and it hasn't really made much of a difference for you?
In the first 8 weeks, everyone obviously shut down. We weren't filming anything. Nobody was going anywhere. Animation, which is a non-contact service, continued and grew and flew. I suppose it was at the point that the construction business started to reopen, but key people in the construction world that we work with, at which point we could then go onto site to film their health and safety films, funnily enough, to revamp those for COVID security reasons, which actually meant that we were then out and about doing a lot of work. So we were impacted for 8 weeks, and then it kind of came back to what I would class as normal. And then I suppose lockdown 2 was on the horizon, and it started to bring what I'm going to summarise as Christmas forwards. Essentially, we normally get quiet week 1 of December. I suppose it's been brought forwards 3 weeks, which is a great thing because you can plan for the new year, but obviously means that we're not necessarily filming as much. So there's ebbs and flows and clean headspace to a certain extent, but arguably not as much on the groundwork. But we certainly haven't been, and we're very lucky, we haven't been impacted as much as those in the hospitality sector, which, you know, is a shame. Yeah.
And you must have been busier than ever, Maddie, because obviously everyone working at home, people not having their cyber up to date. For pupils as well, I would say, you know, in some homes, everyone was trying to work online. So I presume busier than ever.
It's really interesting because, you know, companies who were looking to have, you know, flexible working from home, that was probably in their like 5-year plan. And so in the space of a month, every company accelerated essentially 5 years forward. And so that was really tough for companies and security teams. And it was tough in terms of people having to adjust to what working from home looks like and the new risks that are associated with that. So I think the cyber and digital industry has been, you know, a fairly steady and secure industry in that sense. But also you've seen how companies have had to pivot the way they do things to be able to support companies that aren't working in big office blocks. They're now having to think, actually, how do we provide the services that we were doing to a big organization? How do we now do that at the individual level? Because we need to protect the individual at the home. So really interesting. It was great to see kind of as a community, the cyber community, not only in Cheltenham, Gloucestershire, but kind of across the UK, we're providing lots of free resources on working from home securely. You know, how do you secure your home Wi-Fi, X, Y, Z? Because unfortunately, cyber criminals will follow the numbers. The more people use the platform, the more they'll exploit it. And so home routers, suddenly they were being targeted a lot more because they knew you know, people who were having private conversations, emails, instead of them going through organisations, they were coming through home routers. So it's been a really interesting time, but I think it's really been positive for people to kind of recognise the importance of digital, that it's not going away, and actually to think about how do we secure ourselves not only in our working environment but also in our personal environment, and think about the people who maybe don't think about securing themselves so much, like grandparents, neighbours who are out of touch with it. So it's been an interesting time. Yeah,
I'm sure.
I think it's brought a lot of innovation in as much as job interviews, meetings, that kind of stuff. Really, I don't know if they're going to go back to what they once were. I mean, I kind of enjoy Zoom meetings because you can get a lot more done, because you can, you know, fix half an hour, 45 minutes, whatever it is. You don't have to then drive back from London. So actually, I think it's a lot of the world of work. I think people are working more efficiently and faster, which is a positive, but arguably, is it a negative in as much people are switching off less? I don't know, the time will tell, but I think it's exciting, and the world of digital, Maddie and myself included, working with content, is definitely a growth market. So that is definitely what we should be looking at.
That's an interesting point, Oliver, about HR, about sort of employees and developing them and so on through this. I mean, my feeling would be that we're going to be selective once this is all over, and there'll be some things that so for example, there are networking opportunities that we have now that we never had. I've been in discussions with people in Muscat, Hong Kong, London, all at the same time, talking about education. So the number of influences and thought-provoking ideas that are coming in to me, you know, in my role are increased. Likewise, I think you can go on more training days if you don't have to get on the train than you can if you have to, you know. So I think there are going to be some things where we can really see the benefits of just being able to do things this way. But I do get a bit desperate to see people after a while. Surely you feel the same. You know, there does, it depends on who you are, but there does come a time when you think, oh, please, you know, Julie, come out for coffee with me, because I'm going mad.
Absolutely. And this actually also leads on. We've had a question about the new cyber park that is coming to between Cheltenham and Gloucester. And one student, year 12 actually, has asked, are there certain jobs or skills or subjects that they should study now so that they are going to be in with a chance more than others when this big cyber park opens?
So I actually love this question because, I mean, no, there's not certain jobs, because every business has a finance team, a HR team, you know, marketing team, but then there is that layer of cyber jobs on top of that. And, you know, so this cyber park isn't about just developing Gloucestershire and its cyber talent. I mean, there's lots of that. There's going to be huge opportunities to get in, to do technical roles, non-technical roles within the cybersecurity sector, but then there's also business management, business consulting roles, HR, marketing. So this development is about showcasing the cyber as an industry, but also it's about showcasing the opportunities that the growth in the cyber sector has for everybody, because everybody will have transferable skills that means that they can enter the cyber industry in some aspect. I did geography. I'm not technical. I now work on the human side of cybersecurity, and I do awareness training and behaviour and culture. I'm a people person. There are lots of people that are people person in other businesses that could transfer and do the same thing. So the cyber part isn't just about cyber. It's about providing huge amounts of opportunities for the county, for young people, and for people that are ready to maybe change sectors, retrain. So definitely it's not just about cyber.
And Myra, are you already in discussions with companies with the cyber park coming, or is it too far ahead for you?
It's a little bit far ahead, but I'm a bit with Maddie on this. There are so many different varied roles that will be coming through for this cyber park. It's not just going to be cyber businesses in the cyber park. There are going to be lots of different businesses in there. You know, there'll be customer service roles. There's going to be retail in there. There's going to be cafes. All kinds of things are going to be in there. So, and even building it from the ground up, if you think about it. So there's going to be construction roles. There's going to be cable laying. All kinds of things actually that are going to come about as part of the new cyber park. So I think it's going to be fantastic. I mean, I've seen all the pictures and all the design and everything. It's going to be amazing. So and it's going to be fantastic for Cheltenham and Gloucestershire, to be honest with you. But like Maddie said, don't always think it's just IT and I'm not great at IT, because there are so many roles that, you know, if you're a good communicator, or, you know, there'll be lots of different things in there that you could actually go and do. So probably just go with the skills that you think you're good at and try and, you know, push that one forward, really, rather than try and make yourself fit into a square peg in a round hole or whatever.
It's like if we look at GCHQ, you know, everyone knows GCHQ in Cheltenham and Gloucestershire. GCHQ isn't just full of cyber, you know, pure technical people. Obviously there's a lot of technical people, but there are roles that cover every aspect of running an organization in GCHQ. You can apply to work in the HR team, the marketing team, the comms team, and that's exactly what all of these companies need. And as we see, you know, Cheltenham and Gloucestershire has a huge amount of cyber startups, incredible growth. And as a cyber startup grows, they grow those teams. And so there's huge amounts of opportunity for people with all sorts of skill sets to get involved in the industry. But I think there is that perception that unless you sit in front of a screen with green text and codes running down in front of you, that it's not for you, but it absolutely is. We're really trying hard to make it be inclusive and accessible to everybody.
I suppose teenagers are seeing, Oliver, they're just seeing, it's everywhere in the press, isn't it? Big cyber park, 40 million, it's going to be amazing. They don't really know very much about it at the moment, and they need someone to make a really good film about it. Do you think?
At the moment about wingling my way in there, yeah, absolutely.
I thought you might, yeah. And for pupils in an independent school and attracting companies from all over the world, it surely is good for all the education sector in Cheltenham, Emma.
Well, it's great for everybody in Cheltenham, isn't it? But certainly, because I also think there are going to be infrastructure improvements, you know, new services provided as a result. I think, you know, for us as a business, because remember, Dean Close also runs nurseries. We have 5 day nurseries, and we educate children from 0 to 19. So there are lots of opportunities to get involved. But my advice to teenagers choosing their GCSEs and A-level subjects will be the same as it's always been, I think, which will be to choose the subjects that you love the most, that you're the most passionate about, and that you have a track record of success in, and to think about the ways in which, as Maddie was saying, your preferences and skills and the gifts you've been born with and the things that you've come to be interested in can then be applied in a variety of ways. And on top of that, add flexibility and openness, so that, because by the time you leave school and go off to university or apprenticeship or straight into work, it'll be different again, and you'll need to be adaptable again. You know, so preparing, you know, minutely for the world as it is today or even next year is not the way to build your future. It's making sure that you build on your own strengths, and then that you have this openness to learn new things as you go on. We're all going to need to go on learning because the world's changing so fast.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the last question is really about, we've been talking a lot up until now, up until the COVID hit, we were talking a lot in Gloucestershire about how we keep our young people. I've been to quite a few seminars and taken pupils on talking about Gloucestershire in 2050 and how we keep them, because they tend to go to university from Gloucestershire and not come back. And so I just wanted your views on how can we make Gloucestershire more attractive? How can we make it, you know, somewhere that they want to come back to? Even David Owen from the GLEP was on a webinar I was on last week, and he didn't come back till he was in his 30s. And I asked him, why did you leave it until your early 30s? And he said, well, it's such a beautiful place to bring up children. So he was in London, very happy in London. When he got married and he decided to have children, he wanted to bring them up in beautiful Gloucestershire. But that isn't really so good. We have that big gap then, don't we, from 18 to 30-year-olds. So what do you think we can do so that all the young people listening today might go to university and then dash back? Probably for the cyber park will definitely help, but is there anything else we can do, really? Myra, what do you think about that?
I think we need to, as Cheltenham and Gloucestershire actually need to attract good businesses and keep them coming to and staying in Gloucester so that the jobs are there. So people don't think, you know, oh, Cheltenham, I've lived in it all my life. There aren't really any good companies here. You know, there are. But we need to shout that probably from the rooftops because it always looks so much better. My daughter's in Leeds. She's just gone to Leeds Uni and she thinks Leeds is fantastic, you know, and I'm sure I'll have the same situation in 5 years' time. She won't want to come back to Cheltenham. But like you say, in 10 years, she might. But it will be the companies that are in Cheltenham that need to make graduates aware that they're here and they can offer them a lot of opportunities. And we have got some really good companies in Cheltenham and Gloucester, but they do need to shout it a bit more, I think, from the rooftops that they have got these roles.
More marketeers. Oliver?
I agree, but arguably, I think if you ask this question in 18 months to us or to indeed anybody, I wonder if the data will have changed because being in London, Manchester, Leeds, Liverpool, any big city, there's a massive amount of people and COVID's changed the perception somewhat in terms of people in spaces. And I do wonder, you know, with regards to people moving out of town, because we look back to lockdown 2, everybody, the evening that lockdown 2 was happening, moved out of London. It was the most cars on the road in however many years. And I do wonder if people are now going to move out to Cheltenham, to Bristol, to the sticks, the surrounding areas, Oxford, for instance, to get away from the city life. So actually, you know, whilst the data does say that we need to keep people in Cheltenham, how do we do that? They're all moving to London. Let's look ahead and let's actually then look back in terms of over the last 18 months, what's happened? And I can't answer that, but I do think it's going to be different moving forward.
Maddie, were you born here?
No, I was born in Northern Ireland, but I've lived here for a very long time. But actually, it's interesting because when I went off to university in Newcastle, I had a great time. You know, Newcastle, party city of the UK, I would say. And when I came back to Gloucestershire, I thought, oh God, it's going to be so boring. And I thought, I'm going to have to get a job in London or Manchester. And actually, what's really interesting is I got a job that I loved and that I'm really passionate about. And now I love this county. I love everything that it's doing and I love investing in this county. And I think that's important, is having the right job opportunities, because if you love your job, why are you going to move somewhere else? Because you love your job. And I think it's about, what do young people like? They like fun things to do on the weekend. They like cool places to go drinking. They like, you know, that sort of thing, not just going for walks in the Cotswolds with your parents. So having spaces that are, you know, like Gin and Juice 131, the brewery quarter that's being developed in Cheltenham, that's got the Botanist and the Alchemist, they're places that young people want to go out drinking and they want to socialise. And so actually, the more you can develop that cultural side for young people, I think helps to add to why they'd want to stay here, because I can't think of a reason why I would want to leave Cheltenham and Gloucestershire now, because it's got kind of all of the tick boxes of a job that I absolutely love and places that I love to go out with my friends, but also it's got the kind of beautiful countryside that's really fantastic to kind of unwind with.
I'm coming to you, Emma. I just don't want to encourage all our teenagers to have a culture of drinking.
Of course not. Of course not. Of course not.
After you listed every single hostelry almost in the centre of Cheltenham. But, you know, I just wanted to put that in there. Emma, what do you think we should do to keep the young people?
Well, you know, part of me feels that I can understand why people in local government and in business in Gloucestershire want to keep young people in Gloucestershire. But I have to say that I think it's good for people to have change. So, you know, I'm not sure that I mean, I'm somebody who's travelled. I come from a services family. We moved around all the time. If you ask me where I come from, I don't know. You know, that's not necessarily a good thing, but I think it's also not necessarily a good thing to stay in the same place you were born until you die. You know, I think it can be really good to have an experience of going somewhere else. And certainly when I was, so this isn't probably what you want me to say, Julie, but when I was working in Wales, again, you know, the Welsh universities and Wales generally, they had a really big push on keeping Welsh young people in Wales. And I just kept saying, why won't you let them go and experience something else? Because they, you know, they could do with being able to contrast where they come from with some other experience. So Maddie, I'm sure your experience in Newcastle, you know, made you love your home even more when you came back to it. You know, sometimes spending some time somewhere else is good. But I mean, I think Gloucestershire is a great place to be. I've come back and I don't come back very often. As I say, I'm a wanderer, so you know it's good.
Also, it's fantastic, so I can go and visit my friends in London. I'll have, you know, drain the bank account because it's expensive, and then come back here on the weekend and have a bit more money to play with than they would. So, you know, it's nice to have friends dotted all over the place because you get to experience different places across the UK. But I also think it's important that we don't just try and retain the young people we have here, but also how do we attract people from outside the county. And I think from a like cyber and digital point of view, the cyber park will do that, because if you want to be engaged with cyber and digital roles, this is, you know, this is how we market the county as having those types of opportunities. But like I said, it's not just about cyber. How do we market the county as having other opportunities as well, because there's loads.
Maddie, do you think they're going to when they're joining the cyber park, do you think they're going to move from, let's say, London and Manchester moving forwards, or will a lot of it be remote? Because we're in now.
So it's interesting. You know, a lot of companies will still do remote working, but actually a lot of companies have said that they need that, they want that physical contact, because that's where collaborative working and innovation really happens. It's interesting, we actually are seeing that quite a lot of companies are developing, they might have a London office, but they're now looking to open a Cheltenham office as well, because they've got people who were previously based in Cheltenham that were commuting to London, but they see the real value of what we've got to offer here in the county. So I think that actually, you know, Cheltenham's got fantastic rail networks to London, to Manchester. We are a real hub. So I think virtualised working will be a benefit, that you could work wherever, but actually people still want to get together and collaborate with teams. I think that's going to be crucial to developing that pipeline for us as a county.
Cheltenham's also got the most pubs per square mile anywhere in the country, just to go back to your...
Well, we need to up that in Cheltenham.
We're laughing about this, but Maddie is right, of course, that you know, lifestyle is what people move for, as well as job opportunities. So not just drinking culture, but other kinds of things as well, you know, things that people enjoy doing in their free time.
But like, we think about when the races are on in Cheltenham, like how...
I was just going to say that no one's mentioned the races.
No, but like, it's amazing. And when obviously the races aren't the same this year, but you know, every November, all of my friends come and stay with me and we go to the races, and it's amazing, and they love it and they think it's fantastic. And that's something none of the places that they live in have. That's, you know, that's really unique, that there's that complete buzz in Cheltenham. And so I think, you know, having things like that on offer is really important.
Okay, we're going to wrap it up. I'm just going to ask for one more comment from you all. Myra, if people want to know more about apprenticeships, they would go on the Gloucestershire College website?
Yeah, and obviously look at the National Apprenticeship Service website as well, because there's all kinds of things out there. And I would say there's so many different job roles out there now. So don't think of yourself as fit in one box. Just go out and explore and see what fits you, rather than the other way around.
Thank you very much. Emma, thank you very much for your educational views too. And any final comment from you?
I think just believe it's going to get better and don't panic. You know, I think for our current cohort of young people, it will be all right. You know, you've got lots of strengths, you've got lots of knowledge, you've got lots of abilities, you'll be okay. And just accept the advice that's on offer.
Lovely, thank you. And Maddie, anything, probably the field that you are in is the most topical at the moment, isn't it?
I think just be open-minded to cyber and digital. It's not going anywhere. It might not seem like a fit now, but it's something that you should really consider. And also, you know that you're not alone with what's happened to you with COVID and everything. It's not, you don't think about it personally. There's a lot of young people going through it, and I think employers are, you know, we're aware of that, and we actually just really want to support those young people who have had a really rubbish time.
Thank you very much for coming. And Oliver, the final word, well, apart from mine, obviously, from you.
I ask questions, be inquisitive, be resilient, but failure, there's no such thing. It's really only feedback.
Super. Thank you all very much. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you did too. And most importantly, I hope lots of the young people that are listening have taken a lot of advice and ideas and everything from this session today. Thank you very much.